He's supposed to be my fake boyfriend for one night, but when Carter pulls me close and kisses me, I forget it's all an act. But then there's Aiden, my boss's son, giving me that smoldering look. My head says this is a mess, but my body, it wants more from both of them. How can I put it? Carter's lips are on mine. His tongue starts to slip in, and my body is on fire even though it shouldn't be. He's been my best friend for over 10 years, and I never considered this, even knowing how handsome he is. But today, everything changed. And while my eyes keep deciding between closed and open, Aiden is across from the dance floor, looking at me and us with hunger. The knowledge that he's watching and that he's probably horny underneath those pretty clothes makes me thrilled in a way I could never expect. How did this happen? It was just a fake dating scenario to skip from my boss matchmaking me with her son, which backfired because he's absolutely gorgeous and good-humored. About 1 hour ago, Carter and I arrived. He, with his strong, athletic body and green eyes, could seduce any man or woman. The party was amazing. It was in a very fancy hotel, and the lights were perfectly placed around the garden and the open dance floor. Carter's arm looped casually over my shoulders as we entered the garden, a shimmering expanse of soft lights, clinking champagne glasses, and impeccably dressed guests. The weight of his touch felt heavier than it should, even though this was just pretend. Just an act, right? "Relax," he murmured, leaning so close his breath warmed my ear. "You look like you're about to bolt." "I'm fine," I lied, straightening my tie and plastering on a smile. "Just don't overdo it." Carter's chuckle was quiet, but it sent a shiver down my spine. "Overdo it? I'm just getting started." Before I could snap back, Mrs. Hathaway, my boss's wife, materialized with a champagne flute in hand and a sparkle of curiosity in her sharp eyes. "Alex! And who is this?" Her gaze flicked between us, a little too much on Carter's hand resting at my waist. "This is Carter," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "My boyfriend." Her painted lips curled into a knowing smile. "Boyfriend? Well, this is a surprise. You've been keeping him quite the secret, Alex." Carter extended his hand with that effortless charm he always wielded. "It's a pleasure, Mrs. Hathaway. I've heard so much about you." She laughed, sipping her drink. "I wish I could say the same. Alex has been very tight-lipped, though he didn't seem to mind me introducing him to my son." Her words hit like a sledgehammer. Before I could stumble over a response, Carter tightened his grip on my waist, pulling me closer. "Well, I'm afraid your son has some competition now," he said with a grin so confident it almost made me blush. Mrs. Hathaway tilted her head, amused, before excusing herself to mingle with another guest. The moment she was gone, I stepped away, only for Carter to pull me back. "She's still watching," he murmured, brushing his lips against my temple in a way that made my pulse stutter. "And so is someone else." I followed his gaze and froze. Aiden stood near the bar, a towering presence in a tailored red suit that made him look like he belonged on the cover of a magazine. His piercing blue eyes locked onto us with a look that sent heat rushing to my face. "He's sizing us up," Carter whispered. "Guess I'll have to make sure he knows you're taken." "Don't you dare—" Before I could finish, Carter turned to me with an intensity that left no room for argument. His hand slid to my face, his green eyes searching mine for just a moment before he kissed me. It wasn't a stage kiss. It wasn't fake. It was firm, lingering just long enough to blur the lines between real and pretend. My heart raced as I clutched his jacket, the world around us disappearing. When he pulled back, my knees felt unsteady, and my breath came in short bursts. From the corner of my eye, I caught Aiden watching us, a smirk curling his lips as he raised his glass in a silent toast. "He's coming over," Carter said, barely holding back a laugh. "This should be fun." I can feel Aiden's gaze like a physical touch, messing with my head just as much as Carter's touches. If I weren't so traumatized by my last relationship, I wouldn't have said no to Aiden. He was just my type. How did this happen? "Relax, baby," he said ironically. "You're doing great." I shot him a glare. "If you call great sweating through my shirt and wanting to punch you, sure." "Don't be so tense," he said, leaning in just enough for his lips to graze my ear. "He's into it. A little bit too much, I think." Was I fine, though? One moment I'm melting into the feel of Carter's steady grip, and the next, I'm burning under the heat of Aiden's gaze. imagining what it would feel like if his hands were on me instead. I shouldn't feel like this. I should be craving more from either of them. But here I am, caught between Carter's easy confidence and Aiden's smoldering intensity. One night, I reminded myself. This was only supposed to be one night. My breath hitched, and before I could argue, Aiden stood in front of us with a devastating smile that could charm the feathers off a peacock. His dark eyes swept over me, then Carter, lingering just a fraction too long on our intertwined hands. "Well, well," Aiden said, his voice smooth and teasing. "I didn't know you were bringing a +1 tonight, Alex. I thought you were unattached. At least, that was what I heard." Carter stepped in smoothly, flashing one of his infuriatingly perfect grins. "Oh, he was. Lucky for me, he's not anymore." I could feel my face heating, but Aiden didn't miss a beat. "Lucky for both of you, then," he said, his gaze flicking to Carter's hand on my waist, then gazing into Carter's eyes with a touch of malice I didn't see coming. "But I have to admit, I'm a little jealous." The words hung in the air, and my brain short-circuited. Did he say he was jealous? Of whom? Of Carter? Of me? Carter's grin widened. "Jealous, huh? Careful, or I might start thinking you're trying to steal my boyfriend." Aiden raised an eyebrow, stepping closer. "And if I was?" "Oh no. Oh, hell no." Carter laughed, low and easy, but I could feel the tension crackling between them like static electricity. "I guess I'd have to make sure he's not tempted, wouldn't I?" he said, his voice dropping as he turned his head toward me, his green eyes practically daring me to respond. I managed a nervous chuckle, and my mouth suddenly dried. "You guys realize I'm right here, right?" Aiden smirked, and his look sent a shiver down my spine. "Oh, we know, love," he said. "You're kind of hard to miss, Alex." I swallowed hard, my brain scrambling for a coherent response, but Carter wasn't done. "Don't worry," he said smoothly, pulling me a fraction closer. "I've got him right where I want him." Aiden tilted his head, his smile turning wicked. "For now, maybe," he smirked. "Or maybe we could do a three-way. I sure am up for that." He blinked and left. He left! That was it. My body was on fire, my head spinning, and I needed one more drink, or several, to survive the night. The moment Aiden walked away, leaving his audacious suggestion hanging in the air, I could only gape after him, my heart pounding like I'd just run a marathon. "What the hell was that?" I whispered, half to myself, half to Carter. Carter chuckled, shaking his head. "That was Aiden Hathaway not so subtly declaring war," he said, his voice laced with amusement. "And you, my dear fake boyfriend, are the battlefield." "Oh, great," I muttered, resisting the urge to bury my face in my hands. Just what I needed tonight, whatever that was. Carter turned to me, his grin softening into something that felt suspiciously like fondness. "Hey, you're doing fine. If it gets too much, we can bail." Before I could respond, I felt a familiar presence at my side again. Aiden was back and holding 2 glasses of champagne, his smile disarmingly charming. "Thought you could use this after my little provocation," he said, holding one out to me. "Thanks," I managed, my voice embarrassingly hoarse. I took the glass, avoiding his gaze, but still felt its intensity. "And one for you, Carter," he added, handing the other glass to him with a far too calm smile for someone who just propositioned us like it was a casual Friday plan. Carter raised an eyebrow but accepted the glass, clinking it lightly against mine. "To surviving the night," he said, his tone playful but pointed. "To making it interesting," Aiden countered smoothly, his dark eyes gleaming as he sipped. I was drowning in the tension, unsure of where to look or what to say, until Aiden leaned in slightly, his voice dropping just for Carter. "I meant what I said, you know." He blinked, and my pulse raced. "Which part?" Carter asked. His lips quirked into a smirk. "All of it. If you were smart, you'd do everything possible to keep him to yourself. Unless, of course, you're open to sharing." I choked on my champagne, heat flooding my face as Carter laughed. "Bold of you, Aiden," he said, setting his glass down on a nearby table. "But maybe you should stop trying to steal my boyfriend at a work event." Aiden shrugged, utterly unbothered. "What can I say? I see what I want, and I go for it." The charged silence that followed was unbearable. I needed to get out of this crowd, this spotlight that felt like it was burning me alive. I wanted them so much that it hurt. My pants were already uncomfortable, and I hated myself for feeling that way. "Excuse me," I mumbled, setting my glass down and slipping toward the exit. I didn't get that far before a hand, Carter's, caught my arm. "Hey, you okay?" "Just need a minute," I said, avoiding his gaze. "And what if I don't let you go?" Before I could respond, Aiden was suddenly there, his hand brushing against my other arm as he leaned in close. "Don't leave just yet. We were having fun, weren't we?" I looked between the two of them, my heart pounding. Their intensity, their proximity, it was all too much. "Guys," I started, but my voice wavered. Aiden stepped in, his voice low and soothing. "Come on, let's go find somewhere quieter. You deserve a break." Carter caressed my hand softly. "I promise, no theatrics, just some time away from the chaos." He made a little pause when Aiden touched my other hand. "Unless you don't want to. Which I know you do because of the bulge you're so hardly trying to hide." I couldn't even deny it. I hesitated, but the thought of some privacy, away from the prying eyes and the overwhelming atmosphere, was too tempting. I drank the whole champagne and gave up. "Fine," I muttered, letting them guide me through the crowd and toward a quieter wing of the hotel. We ended up in a private lounge, the door clicking shut behind us. The room was dimly lit, and the plush furniture and soft golden glow offered a sense of intimacy that was both comforting and terrifying. "Better?" Carter asked, his voice warm as he settled beside me on the couch. "Maybe," I said, still catching my breath. Aiden, leaning casually against the doorframe, looked at me with an intensity that sent a shiver down my spine. "You know," he started, his tone light but teasing, "I wasn't kidding earlier. You're pretty irresistible, Alex." Carter chuckled, draping an arm around my shoulders. "Get in line, Hathaway," I groaned, burying my face in my hands. "You two are going to kill me tonight." Aiden laughed, stepping closer until he sat across from us, his dark eyes never leaving mine. "Relax, Alex. We're just getting started." And that was the most incredible night I've ever had. 1 week later. Sunlight streamed through the blinds, yanking me from the half-sleep I'd been clinging to all week. I stared at the ceiling, my heart racing as the memories hit me again. It's been 7 days, and I still couldn't shake the heat of that night. Even in the single moments of the day, there it was. Memories of how their eyes locked on me, making me feel caught, exposed, and wanted. I remember clearly Carter's smooth and warm laugh echoing in this room, paired with his steady hand on my back, grounding me. And then there was Aiden, his intensity, his smirks, the way he didn't look away from us while enjoying our bodies. I groaned and rolled over, checking my phone out of habit. It had been a few days since I'd replied to either of them. Carter's messages had been easy, light, exactly what I had expected. Until they weren't. "You seemed distracted last time. Want to talk about it?" It popped on my screen. And Aiden? He'd gone straight for the kill. "Still thinking about us? I know I am." My stomach twisted. Every time I thought about replying, I froze. What could I even say to Carter? That I was confused? That I couldn't stop replaying that night, imagining his steady hands or the way Aiden's smirk made my pulse race? I sat up, dragging my hands through my hair. It had been a week, but my head was still spinning, stuck in a loop between the two of them. Was I overthinking this? Or was I in way over my head? My phone buzzed, jolting me. Carter again. "Hey, want to grab coffee? Feels like you've been avoiding me." I didn't have time to process that before there was another buzz. Aiden this time. "Dinner tonight? Or do I have to come drag you out myself?" 2 texts, 2 men. I was going insane. The next day. I sat across from Carter at the little coffee shop we used to go to meet up after work. The familiar setting should have calmed me, but today it hadn't. The memory of him ramming me made me sitting there feel different. He stirred his coffee, the sound of the spoon through the ceramic filling the silence. He took a sip and looked at me with his green eyes. "You've been quiet," he said, his voice soft but probing. I shrugged, fiddling my fingers on the edge of my cup. "Just a lot on my mind, I guess. That's not surprising." I glanced up sharply. What's that supposed to mean? He tilted his head, a small smile on his face. "Come on, Alex. You think I didn't notice how things have been weird between us since we've had sex? I blushed so hard I wanted to crawl down the earth. You've been dodging my texts. I haven't been dodging, I started, but his raised eyebrows stopped me. Okay, maybe I have. He sighed, setting his coffee down. I get it. That night, it changed things. For me too, if I'm being honest. That made me pause. What do you mean? I'm saying I've been thinking about us. His smile faded, replaced by a serious look that made my stomach flip. About you. And not just as my best friend. His words hung in the air, heavy and electric, but he kept going. I don't want to ruin what we have, but I can't stop thinking about how it felt, Alex. How you felt. My throat tightened. Carter. He leaned forward, his eyes fixated on mine. Look, I know last week was complicated and a bit off. Aiden threw a wrench, but I need to know. Was anything real for you that night? With me? I opened my mouth to answer, but I closed it again. Carter waited, his expression patient but expectant, like he wasn't letting me dodge this one. It felt real, I finally admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. But I don't know if it's something we should. Should and shouldn't doesn't matter, he interrupted me. I won't lie, saying that never crossed my mind before, but eventually it disappeared. But that night changed it for me. I never thought about it, but now it doesn't leave my mind, I said lowly. I just need to know if there's something worth figuring out between us, or I should just let it go. I swallowed hard, staring at where his hand rested over mine. The warmth of his touch was familiar and comforting, but now it felt like something more, something I wasn't sure I was ready for. But as I looked up into Carter's steady green eyes, I realized I might not have a choice. I think we can try, but what do we do about Aiden? He stared at me with luxury, and my guts told me I was in some sexy danger, and I would secretly like the answer. I'm into him too, though. My eyes widened. Me too. No strings attached, right? He said, finishing his coffee. That sentence made me shiver, and I realized I was feeling jealous somehow. But that was unfair since I also wanted Aiden. Right, I said. The next night. The bar Aiden picked was fancy and modern, just like him. He was already there when I arrived, leaning casually against the bar with a drink in his hand. He spotted me, his smirk enough to send a jolt straight to my stomach. Alex, he said, warm and smooth. You're beautiful. I flushed, tugging at my shirt collar as I walked over. Thanks, even though I haven't had much time to dress up properly. Spontaneity suits you. He handed me a drink, something amber and mysterious. Thought I'd see if you could keep up. I raised my eyebrows, taking a sip. It was strong, but not unpleasant. Much like him, too. Keep up with what? His grin widened as he leaned closer, his cologne filling the space between us. Me, obviously. God, he was too much. The way he looked at me made my pulse race, but behind the thrill was a flicker of something else. Carter. Was he at home? Would he care that I was here? You're overthinking, Aiden said, his voice pulling me back. His fingers brushed mine where they rested on the bar, a touch so light it could have been accidental, but I knew better. Am I? I asked, trying to sound casual. Mm-hmm. His eyes scanned my face, sharp and focused, like he was reading a script I didn't know I'd written. Relax, Alex, this is supposed to be fun. He straightened, swirling the ice in his glass before taking another sip. Unless, of course, you're thinking about him. I stiffened. What? Aiden tilted his head, his smirk softening into something almost playful. Carter, I saw the way you looked at him last week. I get it, you know. He's steady, safe, predictable. I bristled. That's not fair. Maybe not, Aiden admitted, stepping closer. But it's true. And yet, here you are with me. His voice dipped lower, a velvety undertone that made my breath hitch. Makes me wonder what you're looking for tonight. I hesitated, my drink suddenly feeling too heavy in my hand. I don't know. Maybe I'm here just to figure things out. Aiden's gaze held mine, leaning towards me, his lips brushing close to my ear, making me shiver. Well, let me make one thing clear. You're not a game to me, Alex, but I play to win. My stomach flipped, a nervous laugh escaping before I could stop it. The words tumbled from my lips. You're so hot and interesting, you know that? He pulled back just enough to meet my eyes, his smirk returning. And you like me. He wasn't wrong. The night wore on, and Aiden kept the conversation light, teasing me just enough to keep me on edge. But occasionally, his hand would brush against mine, or he'd look at me like he dared me to look away. I couldn't help but wonder if Carter knew I was here. Would he be jealous? And if I was being honest, did I want him to be? But as Aiden leaned closer, his eyes flickering to my lips, all my questions melted away. Right now, there was only him, the hum of the bar, and the electric pole that kept drawing me closer. And somehow, I also missed Carter's presence with us, and I know Aiden did too. 2 weeks later. The sound of laughter rang out from across the table, and a low, shared chuckle instantly pulled me on edge. I glanced over to find Carter and Aiden leaning against the counter. Their postures were relaxed, and their smiles were easy to see. Aiden gestured animatedly with his drink, and Carter's head tipped back as he laughed again, a rare, unrestrained sound that makes my stomach twist. "What's so funny?" I asked, walking over, trying to keep my voice casual. "Oh, just something from earlier," Aiden said, waving it off like it was nothing. "Yeah," Carter added, grinning at Aiden. "You had to be there." The words hit harder than I expected, a subtle pang of exclusion blooming in my chest. I shifted on my feet, the easy air between them suddenly suffocating. "I see," I said, forcing a smile as I sipped my drink. "Guess I missed the memo." Carter frowned, his green eyes softening, and I knew he got worried. "It's not like that, Alex. We were just—" "It's fine," I interrupted, plastering on a grin that felt as fake as it probably looked. "You two seem to be hitting it off, and that's good, right?" I couldn't stop when my mind took me to images of them meeting together without me, even though I knew I was doing it as well. Aiden raised an eyebrow, his smirk tilting. "Jealous, are we?" I laughed, but it came out hollow. "Why would I be jealous? I mean, I thought we were, all figuring this out together." The room felt smaller, the tension creeping around my edges. Carter shifted awkwardly, scratching the back of his neck, while Aiden kept his composure, but added some concern to its face. "Alex," Carter started, his voice quiet, "you're not being left out. You know that, right?" "Do I?" I snapped before I could stop myself. "Because from where I'm standing, it feels like I'm just the third wheel here." Silence. I hated how raw I sounded and how exposed I was, but I couldn't help it. The past weeks have been a whirlwind of emotions. We decided to give being a throuple a shot since we all seemed into each other, and for a while, it was better than anything I'd ever known in my life. But soon the doubts started creeping in, and I'd been facing the fear of wanting them both, but constantly wondering if they wanted me as much as they seemed to want each other. Aiden set his glass down. The sound of the glass against the table was loud amidst the quiet. He stepped closer, his expression now weirdly serious. "Alex, babe," he said, his tone soft but firm. "That's not fair, you know?" "Isn't it?" I asked, my voice quieter now but still sharp. "Because the way you two look at each other, it's hard not to feel like I'm just an afterthought." Aiden's brow furrowed, and he crouched down slightly, leveling himself to meet my gaze. "You're not an afterthought. Not to me, not to either of us." His hand hovered for a moment before he placed it lightly on my knee. "And if we ever made you feel that way, I'm sorry. Truly." "Well," I muttered, unable to stop myself. "It sure doesn't feel that way sometimes." Aiden took a breath. This serious side of him took me off guard, and made me feel a bit ridiculous all of a sudden. But it was good to hear all that, even though I still couldn't actually follow through. "Alex, I get it. You're scared you'll be left out. But that's not going to happen. You're the one who makes this all make sense. For me. And I know that's for Carter, too." I blinked at him, his words catching me off guard. "What do you mean?" "I mean this thing we have, this crazy, messy thing. We wouldn't even have it if it weren't for you," Aiden said, his blue eyes unusually vulnerable. "You're the one who pulled us together. Even when I'm with Carter, you're always on my mind. I'm into him, but I'm also into you." Carter slid closer, taking my hand in his thumb tracing soothing circles against my skin. "He's right," Carter said softly. "You're not just part of this, Alex. You're the reason for it." "I don't know," I said, my voice faltering as the doubt curled tighter around my chest. "You two seem so natural together. And me, I'm just—" "Alex," Aiden interrupted, his voice firm but still gentle. "Don't do that. Don't compare. Carter and I, we've been figuring this out just like you have. And trust me, I wanted this to be no strings attached." Carter nodded, his green eyes earnestly. "Same here. You mean everything to us. Not just as some addition to what we have, but as someone who's shaping it with us." I looked between the two of them, their sincerity undeniable, but the ache in my chest refused to completely fade. "It's just hard sometimes. I see how easily you two connect, and I'm scared I'll never quite fit." "You already do," Aiden said without hesitation. He shifted closer until his hand covered mine where it rested on my lap. "Look, I know I can be a little cocky," Carter snorted softly. "A little." Aiden shot him a look before turning back to me, his lips twitching into a small, self-aware smile. "Okay, fine, a lot. But when it comes to you, Alex, I'm not playing around. You mean a lot to me, and I need you to know that." Carter squeezed my hand. "To both of us." I swallowed hard, their words slowly chipping away at the walls I'd built around my fears. I don't want to lose either of you." "You won't," Carter said firmly. "I've been giving up on our whole friendship for this, and I think it's worth it." I looked at him and couldn't help the small warmth of happiness from hearing that. It felt good to know it wasn't just me. "And if you ever feel like you're not being heard, you've got to tell us," Aiden added. "This is new for all of us, but we're in it together. You're the glue, Alex, don't forget that." I exhaled, a tentative smile breaking through. "Okay," I said quietly. "I'll try." Aiden grinned then, that familiar playfulness slipping back into his voice. "Good, because I'm not giving up on us that easily." But as they both smiled at me, warmth and reassurance in their eyes, I couldn't shake the fear that maybe I wasn't enough to hold this fragile thing together. The next day. The evening air was heavy as we stepped outside, but Aiden's energy seemed to cut through the chill with ease. He led the way with his usual confidence and playful grins. Carter walked beside me, his hands brushing into mine occasionally, grounding me without even knowing it. "You sure this is a good idea?" Carter asked with a doubtful look at Aiden. "Of course," Aiden said by turning to look at us. "Alex, my love, I know you're still uptight, but sometimes what we need isn't another talk or a quiet dinner, and yes, a reminder of why this works." I crossed my arms, laughing lowly, annoyed by how he read me so fast. "And how are we going to do that?" I asked. He gave me a smirk, his eyes glinting mischievously. "You'll see." 10 minutes later, and we were standing in front of a small, neon-lit karaoke bar. It wasn't the fancy kind I'd expected from Aiden to lead us. Instead, it was cozy and small, but yet surprisingly charming. Carter laughed. "This is your big plan?" "You doubt me?" Aiden shot back, already holding the door open. "You'll be thanking me by the end of the night." Inside, the warmth and chatter of the room enveloped us, and for the first time that day, I felt a little lighter. Aiden snagged a booth near the back while Carter ordered drinks, leaving me to sit across from him. "So," Aiden began, leaning forward with an almost boyish grin, "ready to show us those ABBA moves again?" I rolled my eyes, but a small smile crept onto my lips. "Don't start." Carter returned with the drinks just in time to hear that. "Oh, we're doing this again? Great," he said, ironically, while both smiling and rolling his eyes. "It's called team building," Aiden said with mock seriousness, clinking his glass against mine. The night unfolded in a series of songs, laughter, and moments that felt impossibly easy. At some point, Carter and Aiden coaxed me onto the small stage, and despite my protests, I found myself belting out a song while they cheered me on like idiots from the crowd. As the final chords of the music faded, I stood there, catching my breath and looking out at the two of them. Carter was clapping, his green eyes bright with pride, while Aiden leaned back in his seat, smirking like he'd orchestrated the whole thing. When I slid back into the booth, Carter wrapped an arm around my shoulders, pulling me close. "You were incredible," he said, his voice soft but full of admiration. "Auntie must be proud." he mocked me, knowing too well my mom made me love ABBA as a child. And you didn't even need tequila this time, Aiden teased, his smirk softening into a genuine smile. Their closeness, their warmth, it was overwhelming in the best way. I sank back into the seat, letting the moment wash over me. I don't know how you do it, I murmured, glancing between them. Do what? Carter asked, his thumb brushing against my shoulder. Make me feel like I belong, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Aiden leaned in, his blue eyes shining so deep that sent a shiver through me. That's because you do, Alex. With us, always. Carter nodded, his green eyes warm and steady. We're not perfect, but we're figuring it out, together. The sincerity in their words settled something deep within me. They were there. They were sincere. There wasn't ever a reason for me to doubt, only to envy. And that was out of the table now. Aiden had chosen the best strategy, to show me how we worked out just fine. We met at a party, we had a great time, and despite that being able to end there, none of us wished it to. That's why we were studying how to be a throuple, and I was the only one standing between that and our failure. Not anymore. This night, this moment, it was special again. I belonged again, and they weren't lying to me, so I should stop lying to myself as well. I wanted them so much it hurt, and I would do all I could to make it work, because I'm in love with them. With this sense of realization, I took a deep breath, a genuine smile breaking through. Yes, I agreed, feeling lighter and confident for the first time in a while. Together. Aiden grinned, raising his glass. To messy, beautiful, perfectly imperfect togetherness. Carter chuckled, lifting his glass as well. To us. We clinked glasses, and their words filled me with hope, courage, and passion. We were just perfect. All the three of us. Being part of a throuple was, of course, far from easy. We each had our moments of doubts and struggles, but the best part of being in a throuple was that instead of one, there were two people you could rely on to help you out. There's no simple guide for being a throuple, except that if you truly love each other, you can make anything work. And after being part of it for over 4 years, I can testify to it better than anyone else. The end. What do you think their life will turn to now Alex realized his feelings for good? Thanks for watching. Consider subscribing to become a part of our Rainbow Force and stay wholesome.